Beamy Clara, 24, sociology student and feminist blogger, always posting about male privilege and how easy guys have it. Sitting in Professor Hillman's gender studies seminar last Tuesday, we're discussing modern masculinity or whatever. Can't help but roll my eyes, raise my hand and interrupt him mid-sentence. Tell him straight up that men in our society don't really suffer. Everything's handed to them on a silver platter. They get better jobs, higher pay, more respect. Meanwhile, women have to fight for everything. Professor just nods and listens to my whole rant. Other students are looking uncomfortable, but I don't care. This is important stuff, and someone needs to say it. When I finish, Professor Hillman leans back in his chair, asks me if I've ever actually tried living as a man, tells me I should try an experiment. Spend one full day living like a typical male college student. Follow the same routines, expectations, social pressures. Says it might give me perspective for my blog content. Honestly sounds kind of ridiculous, but also intriguing. Think about all the content I could get from this. Imagine the posts I could write about how absurdly easy it would be. Agree to do it, already planning my blog series in my head. Professor gives me some guidelines about the experiment. Need to take on typical male responsibilities and social roles. Can't rely on female social support networks during the day. Have to respond to situations the way society expects men to. Spend the weekend preparing and researching. Maya thinks the whole thing is hilarious when I tell her. She's my best friend and fellow feminist activist. We both agree this will probably be the easiest day ever. Plan to document everything for our respective blogs. She suggests I should really lean into the experiment. Act exactly how society expects men to act. Monday morning comes way too early. Alarm goes off at 5:30 a.m. because Nate invited me along to his job. He's my neighbor in the dorms and works construction part-time. Figured this would be perfect for the experiment. Actual physical labor that men typically do. Stumble out of bed, feeling already exhausted. Nate picks me up in his beat-up truck at 6 a.m. Tells me we need to be on site by 6:30 sharp. No time for my usual morning routine of coffee and social media. Just grab a protein bar and try to wake up in the passenger seat. Arrive at the construction site while it's still dark outside. Immediately realize I'm not prepared for this. Foreman assigns me to help move materials with the crew. Heavy bags of cement, steel beams, wooden planks. Within the first hour, my back is already aching. Try to keep up with the other guys, but struggling hard. Nobody offers to help or asks if I need a break. Just expected to pull my own weight without complaint. Around 9 a.m., I'm feeling pretty beaten down already. Mention to Nate that this is more exhausting than expected. He just shrugs and says, "That's how it is every day." Tells me complaining won't make the work any easier. Other workers nearby nod in agreement. Realize that seeking sympathy isn't really an option here. Break time finally comes, and everyone sits in silence. Scroll through my phone hoping for some encouragement. Usually Maya and my other friends would be texting support, but I committed to the experiment, so can't reach out. Feel weirdly isolated, even surrounded by all these people. Notice the other guys don't really talk about feelings or struggles. Second half of the morning shift is brutal. Muscles I didn't even know existed are screaming in pain. Sweat is stinging my eyes, and my hands are getting blisters. Keep waiting for someone to acknowledge how hard I'm working. Back home, my friends would be praising my effort by now. Here, nobody seems to notice or care about individual struggles. Lunch break arrives, and I'm practically collapsing. Find a quiet spot to sit and try to recover. Text Maya briefly, but remember, I can't really vent to her. She asks how it's going, and I just say it's interesting. Don't want to admit already how difficult this is becoming. Eat my sandwich in silence while the other workers joke around. Afternoon shift starts, and my body feels like it's breaking down. Every movement hurts, but there's still hours of work left. Try to pace myself, but the foreman keeps pushing everyone. Tells us we need to finish this section before quitting time. No consideration for individual limits or comfort levels. Just the expectation that we'll somehow find a way to get it done. Around 3 p.m., I'm seriously questioning my ability to continue. Watch Nate and the other guys push through their obvious exhaustion. Nobody is complaining or asking for help. They just keep grinding through the pain and fatigue. Start to understand this isn't just about today for them. This is literally their everyday reality. Finally clock out at 4 p.m. and feel like I've been hit by a truck. Nate drives me back to campus, and I can barely stay awake. He mentions this was actually a pretty easy day for construction work. Tells me some days they work 12 hours in worse conditions. Can't even imagine how that would be possible. Feel respect for him that I never had before. Get back to my dorm and want nothing more than a hot shower. But realize the experiment isn't over yet. Still have evening classes and social situations to navigate. Drag myself to Professor Martinez's lecture on social theory. Usually I'm pretty engaged and vocal in his classes. Sit down and immediately notice something different. When I raise my hand to make a point about labor conditions, Professor Martinez barely acknowledges my comment. Tells me we'll discuss it more after class if I'm interested. Normally, he encourages classroom debate and discussion, but today, my input seems less valued somehow. Try again later in the lecture with a question about methodology. This time, he gives a brief answer and moves on quickly. Other students aren't really engaging with my contributions either. Feel like I'm somehow less visible or important today. Wonder if this is what Nate experiences in academic settings. After class, I approach the professor like he suggested. Want to discuss some points about worker exploitation. He listens politely, but seems distracted and rushed. Gives me some generic advice about reading more theory. Usually our post-class conversations are much more substantial. Today, I feel dismissed and intellectually overlooked. Head to the gym next, because that's part of my regular routine. Normally, I do yoga classes or light cardio with friends. Today, decide to try the weight room like most guys do. Immediately feel out of place and intimidated by the environment. Everyone seems bigger, stronger, and more experienced. Start with some basic exercises I've seen guys doing. Bench press, squats, deadlifts, the typical stuff. Quickly realize I have no idea about proper form or weight selection. Nobody offers advice or guidance like they do in my usual classes. Expected to figure it out myself or risk looking incompetent. Struggle through a basic workout routine for about an hour. Other guys are lifting much heavier weights and showing off. Feel pressure to push myself harder than feel safe. End up nearly dropping a barbell and feel embarrassed. Nobody seems concerned about my safety or well-being. Just expected to handle my own business without help. Leave the gym feeling even more physically and emotionally drained. Muscles are shaking from the construction work and workout combined. Realize I still have several hours left in this experiment. Usually by this point in the day, I'd be texting friends for support, but committed to experiencing male social expectations. Grab dinner alone at the campus dining hall. Normally, I'd sit with Maya or other friends from my classes. Today, eat in silence while observing other male students. Notice they mostly eat quickly and don't linger for conversation. Many are on their phones or studying while eating. Seems like a much more isolated social experience. After dinner, head back to my dorm to do homework. Have a sociology paper due tomorrow that I haven't started. Normally, I'd call Maya and we'd work on assignments together. Today, tackle it completely alone without any collaboration. Find it much harder to stay motivated and focused. Miss the social support I usually rely on for academic work. Around 9 p.m., start feeling really overwhelmed by everything. Physical exhaustion from construction work is still lingering. Academic stress is building up without my usual support network. Emotional isolation is becoming harder to ignore. Want desperately to reach out to Maya for encouragement. Resist the urge to break character and stick to the experiment. Try to power through the homework like I imagine men do. Just focus on getting it done without seeking help or validation. Takes much longer than usual because I keep getting distracted, keep thinking about how lonely this whole experience feels. Finish the paper around midnight and feel completely drained, both physically and emotionally exhausted in ways I've never experienced. Realize I've been pushing through discomfort all day without complaint. Wonder how Nate and other guys maintain this routine consistently. Starting to question some of my assumptions about male privilege. Try to get some sleep, but my mind keeps racing. Body is sore from construction work and gym session. Brain is tired from academic work without social support. Emotions feel suppressed and unexpressed all day. Beginning to understand why men might struggle with mental health. Wake up Tuesday morning feeling like I barely slept. Alarm goes off, and I instinctively want to hit snooze. Remember that Nate probably doesn't get that luxury. Force myself out of bed to continue the experiment, already dreading another day of physical and emotional challenges. Meet Nate for another construction shift at 6 a.m. Body is still sore from yesterday, but push through anyway. Notice he never complains about being tired or in pain, just shows up and does the work regardless of how he feels. Try to match his stoic attitude and work ethic. Today's job involves even more heavy lifting than yesterday, moving concrete blocks in the hot morning sun. Within an hour, I'm sweating profusely and struggling to keep up. Other workers notice my difficulty but don't offer assistance. Expected to find my own way to contribute effectively. Around 10 a.m., I'm feeling seriously overwhelmed. Physical pain is intense and getting worse by the hour. Want desperately to take a break or ask for help. But notice none of the other workers are showing weakness. Force myself to continue despite every instinct telling me to stop. Lunch break comes as a huge relief from the physical demands. Sit with Nate and some other construction workers. They're talking about their weekend plans and other casual topics. Nobody mentions the difficulty of the work or physical discomfort. Realize emotional vulnerability isn't really acceptable here. Try to join the conversation, but feel out of place somehow. My usual topics of discussion don't seem relevant or interesting. These guys talk about sports, work, and practical matters. Miss the deeper emotional conversations I have with female friends. Starting to understand male social dynamics better. Afternoon shift is even more challenging than the morning. Body is reaching its absolute limits of endurance. Every muscle fiber is screaming in protest. But there's still hours of work remaining before quitting time. Watch other guys push through similar obvious discomfort. Around 2 p.m., I nearly collapse while carrying steel beams. Nate notices and asks if I'm okay. Want to admit that I'm struggling and need help. But remember, this is how men are expected to handle difficulty. Tell him I'm fine and force myself to continue working. Last 2 hours of the shift feel like an eternity, operating on pure willpower and determination. Every step requires conscious effort and mental focus. Understand now why men might develop such mental toughness. This daily grind demands incredible psychological resilience. Finally finish work and feel like I've accomplished something significant. Despite the pain and exhaustion, there is satisfaction in completing it. Nate compliments my work ethic and says I'm getting the hang of it. Feel proud in a way that's different from academic achievements. Beginning to appreciate the value of physical labor. Get back to campus and have just enough time for a quick shower. Need to attend Professor Hillman's seminar to discuss the experiment. Drag myself across campus feeling like a zombie. Other students look fresh and energetic compared to how I feel. Wonder if this exhaustion is normal for working men. Arrive at the seminar and take my usual seat. Professor Hillman asks how the experiment is progressing, want to share all the insights I've been having, but realize I need to maintain the male persona until it's over. Give a brief update without revealing my internal struggles. During class discussion about gender roles and social expectations, find myself seeing the topics from a completely different perspective. Male students' comments make more sense now than before. Understand some of the pressures and constraints they face daily. Wish I could contribute these new insights to the conversation. After the seminar, Professor Hillman pulls me aside, asks more detailed questions about my experience so far, tell him about the physical demands and emotional isolation. He nods knowingly and says this matches what other students have reported. Suggests I pay attention to my emotional state over the next few hours. Head to the library to work on research for another class. Normally, I'd find a table with friends and make it social. Today, sit alone and try to focus despite mental fatigue. Miss the collaborative energy I usually get from study groups. Academic work feels much more difficult in isolation. Spend 3 hours researching gender theory for an upcoming paper. Ironic that I'm studying about male experiences while living one. Starting to see gaps in some feminist theoretical frameworks. Wonder if we've been missing important aspects of male social reality. Feel like my worldview is shifting in unexpected ways. Around 7 p.m., decide to grab dinner and then hit the gym again. Want to maintain the routine that seems typical for college men. Eat quickly, without much attention to the social aspects of meals. Notice other male students doing the same thing. Meals seem more functional than social for many guys. At the gym, try to push myself harder than yesterday. Figure consistency and progression are important masculine traits. Body protests every movement, but force myself through the routine. Other guys are doing the same thing despite obvious fatigue. Realize this dedication to physical fitness requires real discipline. During the workout, observe how men interact in this environment. Very little emotional expression or vulnerability shown. Competition and performance seem to be primary motivators. Encouragement is minimal and always focused on achievement. Miss the supportive atmosphere of my usual fitness classes. Finish exercising and feel both accomplished and completely drained. Shower quickly and head back to my dorm room. Still have homework to complete before tomorrow's classes. Mathematical statistics assignment that requires several hours of focus. Normally, I'd work with study group, but tackling it alone tonight. Sit at my desk and try to concentrate on problem sets. Physical exhaustion makes mental work much more challenging. Keep losing focus and having to reread the same problems. No social support or encouragement to help push through. Understand why men might struggle more with asking for academic help. Around 11 p.m., finally finish the statistics homework. Feel proud of completing it independently despite the challenges, but also emotionally drained from the isolation and self-reliance. Realize I haven't had a meaningful emotional conversation all day. Starting to understand male loneliness in a visceral way. Try to wind down and prepare for sleep. Body is exhausted, but mind is still racing from everything. Think about Nate and how he does this routine constantly. Wonder about his internal emotional life and coping mechanisms. Feel new respect for the mental strength required for this lifestyle. Lie in bed reflecting on the past 2 days of the experiment. Physical demands have been much more challenging than expected. Emotional isolation has been surprisingly difficult to handle. Social expectations feel restrictive and demanding in different ways. Beginning to question some of my previous assumptions about male privilege. Realize tomorrow is the final day of the experiment. Part of me is relieved that it's almost over. Another part wants to continue learning from this experience. Feel like I'm gaining insights that could be valuable for my activism. Drift off to sleep thinking about how to process all of this. Wake up Wednesday morning for the final day of the experiment. Body is still sore, but getting slightly more adapted to physical demands. Mental state feels different than it did at the beginning. More focused on practical tasks and less on emotional processing. Wonder if this psychological shift is temporary or more lasting. Meet Nate for the last construction shift. He mentions that I seem to be getting stronger and more efficient. Tells me the other workers have noticed my improvement too. Feel genuine pride in developing these practical skills. Understand now why men might derive identity from physical competence. Today's work involves finishing a foundation that we started Monday, requires precise measurements and careful attention to detail. Combine physical strength with technical knowledge and problem solving. Realize construction work is more intellectually demanding than expected. Gain appreciation for the skill and expertise these jobs require. During lunch break, have a longer conversation with the crew. They share stories about their families, goals, and life challenges. Notice they express care and concern in practical rather than emotional ways. Talking about providing for children, fixing problems, taking action. Understand male emotional expression might be different rather than absent. Afternoon work goes more smoothly than previous days. Body is adapting, and I'm learning efficient movement patterns. Still challenging, but feels more manageable than before. Other workers treat me more like an equal team member. Sense of belonging and contribution feels rewarding. Finish the final shift with genuine sadness about leaving. These guys have accepted me, and I've learned valuable skills. Nate says I could probably get hired if I wanted to continue. Feel honored by the compliment and the inclusion. Realize manual labor deserves much more respect than I previously gave it. Return to campus for the last portion of the experiment. Attend my afternoon sociology classes with fresh perspective. Listen to discussions about gender and social justice differently. See complexity in issues that previously seemed straightforward. Want to contribute these new insights, but wait until experiment ends. During Professor Chen's feminist theory class, we discuss emotional labor. Usually I'm very vocal about how women carry unfair emotional burdens. Today, I listen and think about the emotional isolation men experience. Wonder if we've been looking at only one side of the emotional labor equation. Begin formulating ideas for how to expand the theoretical framework. After classes, head to the gym for my final workout. Push myself harder than I have during the entire experiment. Want to end on a strong note and test my improved physical capacity. Other men in the gym nod approvingly at my effort and focus. Feel accepted into this community in ways I never expected. During the workout, reflect on how my relationship with my body has changed. Previously focused mainly on appearance and how others perceived me. Now more aware of functional strength and physical capability. Appreciate what my body can accomplish, rather than just how it looks. Understand why men might develop different relationships with their physicality. Finish exercising and head back to my dorm to prepare for tomorrow. Experiment officially ends tonight, and I'll return to normal routine. Feel both relief and strange reluctance to give up this experience. Part of me wants to continue exploring these insights, realize I've learned things that will permanently change my perspective. Spend the evening completing final assignments as part of the experiment. Tackle advanced calculus homework without seeking help from anyone. Struggle through difficult concepts using only textbooks and online resources. Takes much longer than it would with collaborative study methods, but feel satisfied with the independent problem-solving accomplishment. Around 10 p.m., decide to write some preliminary notes about the experiment. Want to capture insights while they're still fresh and immediate. Reflect on the physical, emotional, and social challenges I've experienced. Think about how these relate to broader gender issues and social justice. Begin seeing connections I never noticed before. Write about the emotional isolation and lack of social support. Realize men might struggle with mental health for different reasons than women, not because they don't have emotions, but because expressing them isn't socially acceptable. Wonder about suicide rates, depression, and other male mental health statistics. Feel like I need to research this topic much more thoroughly. Also write about the physical demands and expectations of strength. Understand now why men might feel pressure to be providers and protectors. These roles require real sacrifice and ongoing physical and mental toughness. Society depends on men willing to do dangerous, difficult, and demanding work. Feel like feminist theory needs to acknowledge and value these contributions. Reflect on the social dynamics and communication patterns I've observed. Men seem to bond through shared activities and practical problem solving. Emotional support happens through action rather than conversation. Different doesn't mean inferior or emotionally stunted, just alternative ways of creating connection and expressing care. Stay up until midnight writing and processing everything I've experienced. Feel like my understanding of gender has become much more nuanced. See both male and female experiences as involving unique challenges and privileges. Want to find ways to advocate for everyone, rather than just women. Drift off to sleep with my mind full of new ideas and perspectives. Thursday morning, wake up feeling different than I have in months. Experiment is officially over and I can return to my normal routine. But don't feel like going back to exactly the same patterns as before. Want to maintain some of the insights and changes I've developed? Get ready for my meeting with Professor Hillman to discuss results. Arrive at his office with several pages of notes and observations. He asked me to share my overall impressions of the 3-day experience. Tell him about the physical exhaustion, emotional isolation, and social pressures. Explain how my perspective on male privilege has become more complex. Admit that some of my previous assumptions were probably oversimplified. Professor Hillman listens carefully and asks thoughtful follow-up questions. Wants to know specifically about moments when I felt most challenged. Discuss the construction work, academic isolation, and gym culture. Explain how the constant expectation of strength and self-reliance felt overwhelming. Realize I'm still processing many aspects of the experience. He asks about potential changes to my activism and feminist writing. Tell him I want to expand my analysis to include male experiences more fully. Still committed to fighting gender inequality, but with broader perspective. Want to advocate for policies that address everyone's challenges. Feel like intersectional feminism should truly include all gender experiences. We discuss the implications for gender theory and social justice work. Professor Hillman mentions that several students have had similar revelations, says the experiment helps people understand the complexity of gender roles. Both men and women face unique pressures and constraints in our society. Effective social change requires understanding all perspectives involved. Leave the meeting feeling validated in my new insights. Spend the rest of the day catching up with Maya and other friends. They're eager to hear about my easy 3 days as a man. Realize I need to carefully explain what I actually discovered. Want to share insights without seeming to abandon feminist principles. Meet Maya for coffee and try to describe my experience. Start by telling her about the physical demands of construction work. She initially dismisses it, saying women do physical labor too. Explain that it's not just about the work itself, but the social expectations. Men expected to endure pain and exhaustion without complaint or support. Describe the emotional isolation and lack of social connection. Maya argues that women provide emotional labor that men benefit from. Agree that this is true, but point out men also provide things women benefit from. Suggest we need to value different types of contributions more equally. Conversation becomes tense as she accuses me of betraying feminist values. Try to explain that I'm not abandoning feminism, but expanding it. Want to create space for understanding male struggles alongside female ones. Maya becomes increasingly frustrated with what she sees as backsliding. Tells me I've been brainwashed by 3 days of male perspective. Leaves the coffee shop angry and disappointed in me. Spend the evening alone processing the conversation with Maya. Realize that sharing these insights will be more challenging than expected. Many people in my social circle might see this as betrayal or weakness, but feel morally obligated to speak honestly about what I've learned. Decide to start with my blog post about the experience. Sit down to write the blog post that will conclude this experiment. Want to be honest about how my perspective has changed. Also want to maintain credibility with my feminist audience. Struggle to find the right tone and framing for these complex insights. Write and delete several different opening paragraphs. Finally, settle on an approach that acknowledges both male and female struggles. Describe the physical exhaustion, emotional isolation, and social pressures I experienced. Explain how this has made me more committed to gender equality for everyone. Argue that true feminism should address the ways that rigid gender roles hurt all people. Emphasize that recognizing male struggles doesn't diminish female ones. Write about the construction workers and their quiet dignity. Describe Nate's daily routine and the respect I've gained for his lifestyle. Explain how manual labor contributes essential value to society. Argue that we need to appreciate different types of work and contribution. Challenge the academic bias that devalues physical and practical skills. Discuss the emotional isolation and its impact on male mental health. Describe how the expectation of constant strength and self-reliance felt overwhelming. Suggest that men might need different types of emotional support than women. Argue for creating space for male vulnerability without feminizing it. Propose that men and women might express and process emotions differently. Write about the gym culture and physical expectations for men. Explain how the pressure to be strong and capable felt demanding. Describe the competitive atmosphere and lack of encouragement. Suggest that body image issues might affect men differently than women. Argue for more inclusive approaches to fitness and physical wellness. Conclude the post by reaffirming my commitment to gender equality. Explain that understanding male experiences has made me a better feminist. Argue that effective social change requires empathy for all perspectives. Call for more nuanced approaches to gender issues and social justice. Invite readers to question their own assumptions and seek deeper understanding. Publish the blog post late Thursday night. Feel nervous about the reaction from my usual audience. Know this might damage some relationships and professional reputation, but feel obligated to share what I've learned honestly. Hope that some people will be open to these more complex perspectives. Wake up Friday morning to dozens of comments on the blog post. Reactions are mixed, with some praising my honesty and others expressing disappointment. Several male readers thank me for acknowledging their experiences. Some female readers accuse me of internalized misogyny and betraying the cause. Realize this conversation will be ongoing and challenging. Spend the morning responding to comments and messages about the post. Try to clarify my positions and address misconceptions. Emphasize that I'm still committed to fighting gender inequality, but want to do so with more complete understanding of everyone's experiences. Find myself defending both feminist values and male experiences simultaneously. Meet with Professor Hillman again to discuss the public response. He tells me this is a common reaction to the experiment. Many students struggle with how to integrate new insights with previous beliefs. Suggests I consider this a learning opportunity rather than a crisis. Reminds me that intellectual growth often involves discomfort and uncertainty. Reflect on how much my worldview has changed in just 1 week. Feel like I'm seeing gender issues with much more complexity and nuance. Still committed to social justice, but with broader perspective on what that means. Want to continue exploring these ideas through research and writing. Hope to contribute to more inclusive approaches to gender equality. Realize that the experiment has changed not just my understanding, but my identity. No longer feel comfortable with some of the simplistic feminist rhetoric I used to embrace, but not ready to abandon feminist values or activism entirely. Searching for ways to synthesize my old beliefs with new insights. Want to become an advocate for everyone rather than just women. End this week feeling grateful for the opportunity to challenge my assumptions. Understand now that empathy requires genuine effort to see other perspectives. Committed to continued learning about gender, privilege, and social justice. Hope that sharing my experience will encourage others to question their own biases. Believe that true equality requires understanding and valuing everyone's struggles. Sitting here now writing this final reflection, thinking about Nate and the construction workers who accepted me, remembering the physical exhaustion and emotional isolation I experienced, grateful for insights that will shape my activism and writing going forward, committed to advocating for a world where everyone's contributions are valued. Realize I still have so much more to learn about gender and society. Want to continue exploring these issues through research and direct experience. Hope to bridge divides between different perspectives on social justice. Believe that understanding each other is the first step toward real equality. Ready to continue this journey with more humility and openness than before.